नमस्कार, आदाब, सत श्री अकाल दोस्तों। स्वागत है आपका एक बार फिर से हमारे YouTube चैनल ब्रास फ्यूजन्स पर, जहां आज हम आपके लिए लेकर आए हैं एक नया लेसन।
All the words that are then used in Article 72. So, just a moment, let me just open up my Constitution too. Yeah. Grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission of punishment. Okay, and then it uses the word suspend, remit, or commute. So there are these different phrases that are used. So before I go into what exactly is the pardoning power, please note that when I use the expression pardoning power, I'm using it in the broad general sense. The broadest of the power is what we call the power to pardon. And if somebody is pardoned, then it means that the punishment and the disqualification laid down by the judiciary is completely rescinded. That is, it is completely reversed. And any conviction is taken away. It also does not leave any stigma upon the accused person anymore. That is, it absolves the accused of any. So it is a very broad power, the actual pardon. It rescinds that entire conviction. It absolves that is, it states that there was nothing wrong with the person at all, and it leaves the person with no stigma. So if there had been a disqualification, which we will come to in our next 2-3 classes, disqualification to be elected as, let's say, a member of parliament, all the disqualification goes, the conviction goes. It is as if the slate has been completely wiped out. Now that is the strongest of the pardon power, and that's what we mean by a pardon. But there are other different words used also. There is a word that is used in Article 72. So, reprieve, that's the next word, pardon, a reprieve. Now, what is a reprieve? It is like a temporary stay. Like we say, a stay of a judgment, a temporary stay. That is for some time that the conviction or the punishment will not take place. And this will be for any special circumstance. So yesterday I was talking about a reprieve. For example, a woman is condemned to death sentence. But it turns out that when she's sent to jail, that the woman is pregnant. You will grant a reprieve until the child is born, and then the hanging of the woman will take place. It's a temporary stay. Another example of a reprieve will be a person has been sentenced to death. So you are familiar with the way the criminal law happens. When finally the judge says on such and such date, I will pronounce my judgment. When she says, I'm going to pronounce my judgment on such and such day, all the accused have to be present in court. You have to be present. Because the moment the judge pronounces the verdict, the moment the judge gives the sentence, from that moment on, the sentence starts running. So you will be present in court, the accused will be present in court, and straight away from court, the person will have to go to jail to undergo that sentence. You cannot go home and say, now let me pack my bags. No, nothing like that. It begins from the courtroom. So the moment the judge delivers the verdict, that's it. Okay. Now, suppose a person has been sentenced to death imprisonment, and in the meanwhile, from prison, the person writes a petition for pardon. Then, even though the sentence may say that he will be hanged within a period of 10 days, there will be a reprieve given, a temporary stay till the disposal of that pardon petition. So that is reprieve. Now let's come to respite. That's the third phrase that is used. Okay. Respite is somewhat similar to reprieve. You will postpone. So if a person comes to the court hall and he or she suddenly collapses there and has to be rushed to the hospital, Then there will be a reprieve till the person undergoes the surgery or medical treatment and is in a fit stage to come back to prison to undergo the imprisonment. For that period, there will be a respite. Okay. So a respite is a postponement or awarding because of any special facts. Okay, so it's a little similar. Then we come to the fourth phrase that is used, which is remission. Does anybody know what a remission is?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, who is speaking? I can't make out. Who's speaking?
Ma'am, Antika.
Antika.
Yeah, it was me.
Ma'am,
Okay. Antika, Priyadarshi, let us speak.
ma'am, it's the reduction of the amount of the sentence without changing the character of it. So, say if the sentence is for 1 year, it may be remitted to 6 months.
So why will it be remitted?
It's basically reduction of the sentence on grounds that
Who will reduce it?
the president or the governor, whoever is exercising the pardoning powers.
Why will the person exercise? What are they? Give me an example. Like I've given of remission, respite and reprieve. Give me an example.
Ma'am, like in the case itself, Epuru Sudhakar, the governor felt that the person who had been convicted, he was convicted on bad grounds that did not hold. So he thought that it would be okay if the rest of his sentence could be remitted. So there were 7 years left of his imprisonment, so he remitted it and said that okay, you can stop your.
So for oftentimes a remission order will read sentence reduced to the period imprisonment already undergone. So already a person would have been in prison. Then you write the pardon letter, and then if it is accepted, then if there's a remission, often what happens is the order will read that the period of imprisonment is restricted to the period of imprisonment already undergone. So the person is released. So it is reducing. Now in respite, in reprieve, and in remission, you will notice that the conviction stays. In reprieve and in respite, it may be postponed for some reason. In remission, in the pardoning power, the head of the state or we come to the conclusion that such a long period of remission of imprisonment is not necessary. Let me reduce it. But the punishment stays. The stigma stays. If at all there's a shortening, there's only a shortening of the conviction. You can contrast this to a pardon which completely wipes out and absolves the accused of any guilt if the person has a clean slate. Now let me come to another, suspend, remit. Suspend is very similar to a reprieve. For a particular time you are suspending the sentence. We come across suspension of sentence very often when a person files an appeal. For example, High Court may have convicted a person for a particular offence. The person has 3 months to file an appeal before the Supreme Court. Immediately you will ask for suspension of the stay till my appeal is filed and it is disposed of. Once again, the suspension. The conviction remains, the culpability remains. Only thing is that it is suspended and it will take into effect after the disposal of the appeal. If the appeal goes in favor of the convict and he is completely discharged and he has said that there was no culpability, then of course the slate is wiped clean. But the slate is wiped clean by the judiciary branch. In pardon, the slate is wiped clean by the executive branch. And the last one that I want to study is commute. Commuting is normally reducing the quality of the sentence itself. See the subtle difference between commute and remission. In remission, suppose a person was convicted for 2 years rigorous imprisonment. The quality of the conviction will be the same. Instead of 2 years RI, it may become 1 year RI. But in commute, you actually take a slightly lesser punishment. If it was death, it will become imprisonment, say rigorous imprisonment. If it is rigorous imprisonment, it would move on to, what's the next one? Simple imprisonment, like that, okay? It will actually be commuting any lower. Now let's look very quickly at 72 to 161 before we come to the case law. Now, one of the differences you will note between 72 and 161 is the very special power that the president has with regard to court martials. 72.2, I'm just reading out. Please open it if you have it there. Nothing in subclause A of clause 1 shall affect the power conferred by law on any officer of the armed forces to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence passed by a court martial. So, for example, if the general has the power to remit, a court martial happens and then the superior officer has a chance to confirm and convict. And then it may go in under the Army Act. It's quite an elaborate structure. That power to suspend or remit is usually with the general, and that may be exercised. Okay. So therefore, now look at 72(1)(a). The power of the president to issue a pardon for a punishment or sentence in a court martial is given exclusively to the president. This is because the president is the commander of the armed forces. When you turn to 161, okay, look at 161. It says the governor of the state shall have the power to grant pardon, reprieve, respite, remission, etc., etc., to commute the sentence of any person convicted of any offence against any law in respect to which the executive power of a state extends. So, in terms of a court martial, the pardoning power, I'm using the word now generically, it's too much to say reprieve, remission, all that whole bundle of words. I'm just going to use the word pardon, but it means all the other lesser powers also, is only exercised by the president with regard to the pardoning power in a court martial case. But please remember that under the Army Act, the power to pardon is also given to a superior army officer. He may have decided not to grant the pardon. The person still has a power to go under, because under section Article 53, it is the president who is the supreme commander of the armed forces. So in that sense, an army officer would have, the stages of asking for a pardon are more. Okay. Now, today what we want to study is, now that we've understood what this means is, I go back to the discussion yesterday. Yesterday, I was asking you that this power of pardon, which the president has, does it make him the ultimate authority in the judicial branch? Or is the president exercising the pardon as part of the executive branch? So is it, in its essence, a judicial power, or is it an executive power? Okay. I think what you can understand is that it is not a judicial power. I say this deliberately because sometimes in some books it's classified as a judicial power which the president exercises. I don't think that that's a correct description, because if it is seen as a judicial power, it places the president in a super appellate position vis-a-vis even the Supreme Court. But we all know that under the doctrine of separation of powers, the Supreme Court is the supreme judicial authority. Yet, there is a need to have this clemency or mercy power, which the president has, simply because in the constitutional scheme, there is a need that anywhere, if there happens to be any reason, good enough reason to exercise this power, which was earlier exercised by a sovereign, has been retained and given now to the head of state. And that exercise of power has two qualities to it. One, it's a constitutional power. We are not looking at it either as a judicial power or an executive power. It is exercised by the president. But Kehar Singh versus Union of India identifies it as a constitutional power. And in that sense, it is a little more similar to the sovereign power, because in a monarchical time, the sovereign was a blend of all powers, including legislative and judiciary, etc. But technically speaking, because it's exercised by the president and the president exercises executive power, usually it is put as part of an executive power. And this view gets greater support from the fact that applying the judgment in Shamsher Singh, for the first time in Maruram versus Union of India 1981, the Supreme Court said that in the exercise of the pardoning power, the President shall be guided by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Now, and that is the position after the Maruram's case, if the President is going to be guided by the aid and advice, and under Article 74, look at Article 74, the Council of Ministers shall aid and advise the President in exercise of his functions. So I could argue that this particular aid and advice is not for the executive power, because his functions is actually could include non-executive functions, or what loosely is called constitutional function that the President exercises. If I take that line of argument, then this is a constitutional power without classifying it as either executive and judiciary. And because 74 does not use the adjective executive function, it merely says to aid and advise the President in the exercise of his functions, that view gains a little credence. Yet, when you look at Shamsher Singh and Maruram, you get the general impression that this is part of the executive power of the union, and that is the latter position is the one that I'm actually going to take in class. But I'm pointing out to you that there is a rich area for you to develop your views. What is a constitutional power which is not an executive power of the President? Can there be unclassified constitutional powers without falling into the bucket of legislative powers, executive powers, and judicial powers? If the answer is yes, the difficult question that you then have to find an answer to is that there remains a residue of governmental powers after the exercise of separation of powers, that there still exercises a residue. And that is a little difficult to argue and find out, because all powers should have been distributed amongst these three broad aims. Okay. No, Manu, to your question, I have to tell you, if pardon has given, then the disqualification completely vanishes. Completely. So the quality of a pardon, if he's got a pardon, a full-fledged pardon, not pardon in the generic sense, a specific pardon, then it rescinds the entire conviction, it absolves him of all blame, and every stigma and every disqualification goes. So let me give you two examples. One, a person is convicted, and based on this conviction, because normally a conviction in a criminal court is sufficient for you to lose your government job. And if the conviction is for a criminal offense which has a high moral turpitude, okay, meaning that it's a very heinous and egregious and very disgusting kind of an offense, then normally under conduct rules, the person will not merely be removed from government service, he will be given the highest form of termination or removal, which is dismissal. Both in removal and in discharge and in dismissal, the employment-employee contract between the government and the government employee comes to an end. Okay, but look at the subtle change in terminology: removal from service, discharge from service, dismissal from service. All three, there is an end to what we call the vinculum juris between the employer and the employee. End of that link. Yet, in removal from service and in discharge, the quality of the stigma is far less. So you may continue to draw your gratuity and your pension. But under our conduct rules and under the pension rules of 1972, if a government employee is dismissed, then the government or the president can issue a supplementary order depriving that person of pensionary benefits. Even though pension is a right for loyal work done so far. The quality of the dismissal is to negate and to take away the right of pension at the end of the service. So, coming back to my example, if the person is, usually you are dismissed if not only under the departmental inquiry, it's found that you have done a wrong thing. Simultaneously, if there is a criminal court which also convicts you for an offense of moral turpitude, then normally instead of just giving dismissal or removal from service, they would give the highest punishment, which is dismissal accompanied with a complete stoppage of any pensionary benefits. Now, if such a person goes in pardon, I don't use the word appeal, don't use that word appeal, please. Sometimes in answer scripts, I find students write, and then the person can file an appeal petition to the president. No, only pardon petition, okay, not appeal. That's part of a judicial language. That person completely is wiped out, and you can move for asking the person to be. So likewise, in Manu, if there is a pardon under 03 and 105, somebody's mic is on. If you can turn it off, I don't know. Please turn it off. Okay. So, therefore, I think we will classify the pardon more as Nikhil, mute your mic, please. Yeah, I'm trying. I can't close. Somebody knows where he is. इसको बोलिए mute his mic.
You can mute his mic from your side.
No, I'm trying to do that.
दोस्तों, अगर आपको आज का लेसन पसंद आया हो तो वीडियो को लाइक करें। इसी के साथ अगर आपने अभी तक हमारा चैनल सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो सब्सक्राइब के बटन पर क्लिक करिए और बेल आइकन दबाना ना भूलें, ताकि आपको एजुकेशन से रिलेटेड नए नए अपडेट्स मिलते रहें। और अधिक जानकारी पाने के लिए आप हमारे फेसबुक और इंस्टाग्राम पेज से भी जुड़ सकते हैं, जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में दिया गया है। धन्यवाद।